In Tokyo, there are intersections where the exact same thing happens every single morning. The red light turns on, cars stop, and at that very moment, black birds fly down from nearby trees, place something on the asphalt right in front of the front tires, and fly back. The green light turns on, the cars start moving, then it's red again. The birds return and collect what's left under the wheels. Cracked walnuts. Tokyo's crows discovered this on their own. No one taught them. They observed the traffic, understood the pattern of the traffic lights, and integrated it into their food foraging strategy. This is not an exception. This is normal behavior for a crow. Today, we are talking about a bird that most of us see every day and barely notice. A creature that solves problems at the level of a 5-year-old child, remembers human faces for decades, holds funerals for its dead, and deceives its peers with a sophistication worthy of a detective novel. The crow. If you are interested in the wild world, subscribe right now. New videos about animals and nature are released here every week. It only takes 3 seconds. Let's start with a confusion most people have. The raven and the crow are not the male and female of the same bird. They are 2 different species. The raven is larger, entirely black, with a characteristic wedge-shaped tail. The crow is smaller, and in most species, gray and black. In many languages, this confusion is deep-seated, and people spend decades thinking they are the same creature. In reality, crows and ravens belong to the genus Corvus, which includes 43 species. This genus comprises ravens, crows proper, rooks, jackdaws, magpies, and nutcrackers. All of them belong to the corvid family, Corvidae, of the passerine order. The smartest birds on the planet are right here. Crows live literally everywhere: the Arctic, deserts, tropics, mountains, cities, and villages. The only condition is that there must be food nearby, and food for a crow is absolutely anything: meat, fish, grain, berries, insects, trash. Crows are entirely omnivorous, and this is exactly what has made them one of the most successful species on the planet. The wingspan of a gray crow is about 100 centimeters, and it weighs around 500 grams. Crows live for about 20 years in the wild, but in captivity, close to humans and with good care, they can live up to 75 years. This is an exceptional lifespan for a bird of this size. To be honest, until recently, I also thought a raven was just a large male crow. Learning the truth threw me off a bit. We are all so used to this confusion. A bird's brain is structured differently from a mammal's. Birds do not have a neocortex, the part of the brain that neurobiologists traditionally believed was responsible for higher cognitive functions. For a long time, this was used as an argument that birds are fundamentally less intelligent. Later, scientists discovered that corvids have another brain structure called the pallium, which performs the same functions as the neocortex in primates, just structured differently. Evolution found another path to the same result. Relative to body size, a crow's brain is one of the largest among birds. In terms of brain-to-body mass ratio, corvids are close to dolphins and are second only to humans and some primates. What does this mean in practice? Research shows that crows solve logic puzzles at the level of a 5-year-old child and sometimes even a 7-year-old. They understand cause and effect relationships. They plan for the future. And this is not a metaphor, but a documented experimental fact. In one famous experiment, crows were given a task. To get food, they had to use a tool that was not currently in the cage. The tool was in another compartment, and the bird could take it now, but use it only later. The crows took the tool in advance, carried it with them, and waited for the moment it was needed. They planned their actions for the future rather than simply reacting to the current situation. Planning for the future is a cognitive marker that was long considered a uniquely human ability. New Caledonian crows, a special species of corvids from the island of New Caledonia, in the Pacific Ocean, became the stars of cognitive science in the early 2000s. They don't just use tools, they manufacture them. They take a twig, trim it to the right length, remove extra offshoots, sometimes bend the end, and use the resulting hook to pull grubs out of crevices in trees. This is not accidental behavior. It is a replicable skill that birds pass down to their offspring through learning. Remarkably, if a bird drops its tool while working, it doesn't just abandon it. It flies down, picks it up, and returns to work. The tool has value. In laboratory conditions, crows were presented with multi-step tasks. To get food, they first had to retrieve a short tool, which could then be used to reach a longer tool, which in turn could finally be used to reach the food. This involves 3 consecutive steps, none of which yield an immediate reward. The New Caledonian crows succeeded. This is called meta-tool use. Among animals, it has been recorded in chimpanzees, orangutans, and crows, and almost nowhere else. Another famous case is the pitcher experiment, which directly replicates Aesop's fable, The Crow and the Pitcher. The birds were given a pitcher of water with a piece of food floating at the bottom, too deep to reach with their beaks. Nearby lay stones. The crows dropped the stones into the pitcher, raising the water level until they could reach the food. They understood the principle of liquid displacement. Furthermore, they preferred heavy stones over light ones and dropped them specifically into the water, rather than into a neighboring container filled with sand. They understood what worked. Personally, this pitcher experiment amazed me the most. It's Aesop's fable. We read it to children as a fairy tale, but a crow actually does it in a lab on the first try. Here is my first question for you. Have you ever seen a crow solve a non-trivial problem, fight a dog, open a bag, or use something as a tool? Let me know in the comments. Researchers at the University of Washington conducted a study that changed our understanding of crows. Scientists wore masks and used them to capture crows on campus. It was a simple operation. Catch them, tag them with a ring, and release them. Afterward, they walked around the same campus, sometimes wearing the masks used during the capture, sometimes in different masks, and sometimes without masks, and observed. The crows that had been captured by researchers in specific masks reacted aggressively only to those masks. Even years later, they would dive bomb, screech, and gather a mob. Other masks got no reaction. They remembered those specific faces as a threat. But the most astonishing part? Birds that were never captured also learned this. Young crows born long after the experiment reacted to the dangerous masks exactly like the adults. The information about the threat was passed down through generations. This is not instinct. It is a cultural transmission of information, social learning, something we are used to thinking of as a uniquely human phenomenon. Crows remember people who harmed them, keep that address in their memory, and pass it on to their children. On the flip side, crows also remember people who feed them. In Japan, Canada, and Russia, there are documented cases of crows bringing gifts to people who regularly feed them. Buttons, coins, shiny pebbles, pieces of glass. This is not a coincidence. It is a behavior that occurs regularly enough to be studied systematically. Crows make food caches. Many people know this, and many other animals do it too. But crows have gone much further in this business. When a crow hides food, it observes whether other crows are nearby. If there are, it creates a fake cache, pretending to bury the food while actually leaving nothing behind. Then it flies to another spot and hides the food there. If observers follow, it creates another fake cache and relocates the food if it feels its secret has been compromised. This is called tactical deception. It requires several complex cognitive operations simultaneously. Understanding that another bird sees what you see, predicting its behavior, simulating a false action, and switching strategies depending on the observer's reaction. Tactical deception has been recorded in chimpanzees, children over 4 years old, and corvids. An important detail: crows that steal from other birds' caches hide their own food much more secretly than crows with less stealing experience. They know how others search because they do it themselves, and they use this knowledge to hide their own food better. Another documented fact: if a crow suspects it was watched while making a cache, it returns later and moves the food to a different spot, but only if there was a real observer. If the crow hid the food alone, it doesn't relocate it. It keeps track of who saw what. Honestly, this really got to me. A crow doesn't just lie, it models what another crow is seeing in its mind. This is called the theory of mind. It was believed to exist only in humans and primates. Turns out it doesn't. Crows form pairs for life. Monogamy for them is not an exception or a coincidence. It is a stable strategy because raising offspring requires 2 parents. One hunts while the other guards the nest. Before finding a mate, young crows live in large, noisy flocks. These are essentially youth gangs. The birds socialize, play, and learn social norms. Once they find a partner, the pair leaves and never returns to the flock. If a partner dies, the surviving crow may remain alone for a long time. Observers have recorded cases of widowhood lasting for years. When a bird in a flock dies, something happens that scientists call a crow funeral. Several birds gather around the body, scream for about 15 minutes, then fall silent and sit motionless before flying away. Why do they do this? Scientists suggest this is not grief in the human sense, but a gathering of information. The assembled crows are trying to understand what killed their companion: the location, the scent, or the presence of a predator nearby. It is learning from another's death, a social mechanism that increases the survival rate of the entire group. But it looks exactly like a funeral. Crows protect their own. If a bird is injured or sick, the flock feeds it, protects it, and does not abandon it. There are recorded cases where healthy crows fed injured companions for weeks until they fully recovered. My second question for you: have you ever noticed a crow watching you? Or have you seen a crow tease a dog, a cat, or another person? Tell me about it. Crows play for real. They slide down snowy roofs and icy slopes not out of necessity, but just for fun. They climb to the top, slide down, climb back up, and slide down again. It is play for the sake of play. They drop objects from a height and catch them, or toss them to a partner who catches them and throws them back, a direct equivalent of playing catch. They tease other animals. They fly at a dog, pull its tail, and jump away. To repeat, this is not aggression. They have enough experience to know that a specific dog won't catch them. It is purely a game, a thrill-seeking activity. In the forest, crows sometimes fly alongside a fox or an otter, teasing, provoking, and dodging them. Researchers have observed this many times. Play in animals is a sign of a developed brain. It requires an excess of cognitive resources that aren't usually available in basic daily survival. Only those who have something beyond the bare necessities for survival can afford to play. Among birds, only corvids and parrots play like this. No one else. To the human ear, a crow just says, "caw." That is about as informative as saying that humans just make the sound, "ah." Crows have a complex system of vocal communication. Different variations of calls carry different information. Alarm signals, food calls, partner calls, or warnings about specific types of predators. Crows distinguish between a predator in the sky and a predator on the ground, and call differently. Other animals in the area understand this. Squirrels and small birds react to a crow's aerial alarm in the correct way by hiding under cover. Furthermore, different crow flocks have been found to have dialects. A group of birds from one area has slightly different variations of signals than a group from a neighboring area. This is a cultural transmission of language, not an instinct, but a learned system that varies slightly from flock to flock. In Austria, researchers discovered that crows use gestures with their beaks. They point to objects and show their partners something interesting. Before this, the pointing gesture was considered an exclusively human and primate feature. It was not expected to be found in birds. Crows living in captivity can learn human words and do so better than many parrots. At the same time, they clearly associate words with situations. It is not just a reproduction of sound. It is using the word in context. Crows hold a special place in human history. Almost all peoples who lived alongside these birds have myths, beliefs, and symbolism associated with the crow or the raven. In Norse mythology, two ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, sit on Odin's shoulders and fly around the world every day, reporting what is happening to the god. This is not a random image. People have observed crows for thousands of years and saw them as scouts, observers, and creatures that know more than meets the eye. Ravens still live in the Tower of London today. According to legend, if they leave the tower, the British crown will fall. The birds' wings are clipped so they cannot fly away. They are fed meat, eggs, and biscuits. Each raven has a name and a personal card with its date of birth. This is a state tradition that is several centuries old. Celtic war goddesses like the Morrigan and Badbo took the form of a crow on battlefields. A crow circling over a battle, feeding on the dead. This is real bird behavior that people witnessed and endowed with supernatural meaning. In China, a three-legged crow in the solar disk is a symbol of the sun. In Japan, the three-legged crow Yatagarasu is a messenger of the gods, showing the way. Practically everywhere, the crow is a boundary between worlds, a bird that sees what is hidden, knows what is unknown to others. Perhaps because that is not so far from the truth. There is one experiment that has become a textbook case in cognitive science. It is called the Betty's task, after the New Caledonian crow that participated in the study. Betty was given a tube with food at the bottom. The food could only be retrieved with a hook. There was no hook, just a straight piece of wire. Betty looked at the wire for a few seconds, then held one end down with her foot and used her beak to bend the other end into a hook. She took the resulting tool and retrieved the food. She had never seen hooks before. No one had taught her to bend wire. She solved the problem on her own, in real time, from scratch. When the video of this experiment was published in the journal Science in 2002, a real debate began in the scientific community. What exactly was happening in the bird's head at that moment? Was it insight, a sudden understanding of the solution, or something else? Repeated experiments with other crows showed that this is replicable. Most individuals cope with similar tasks. The speed of the solution varies, but a solution is found. For comparison, most chimpanzees do not cope with this task at all. Crows understand what the future is. This sounds cliché, but it is actually an exceptional cognitive ability. Most animals live in the present. They react to stimuli here and now. Planning, that is, performing an action today for a result tomorrow, requires the ability to mentally represent a situation that does not yet exist. Scientists from Lund University in Sweden tested this on crows. The birds were given access to a vending machine slot through which they could exchange a token for food. Then the window was closed for 15 hours. Before closing, the birds were offered either food right now or a token that would only be useful in 15 hours when the window opened again. The crows chose the token. They postponed immediate gratification for future benefit. They planned 15 hours ahead, through sleep, through a long wait. This is called delayed gratification. In children, this ability forms at around 4 years of age. In most animals, it doesn't form at all. City crows are a separate story. These are not just birds that are used to living near humans. These are birds that actively use the city as a habitat and adapt their behavior to specific conditions. Tokyo's crows and traffic lights have already been mentioned, but this is not the only example. In Eastern European cities, crows have learned to open trash cans, not just tip them over, specifically open the lids with latches. They watched people doing it and reproduced the movements. Crows in Moscow have memorized the schedule of garbage trucks. They appear near trash cans shortly before the truck arrives, knowing that during the transfer process, the contents will be accessible. This is not a coincidence. It is knowing the schedule. In Canada, crows systematically steal bait from fishermen. They pull the line out of the ice hole with their foot, step by step, until the hook with the bait is on the ice. They invented this on their own by observing the fishing process. City crows are larger and smarter than their forest relatives. This is documented. The city is an environment where the brain literally receives more stimuli, more tasks, and more opportunities for learning. Crows raised in the city show higher performance in cognitive tests. They are evolving alongside us, literally. I now look differently at the crow that sits in my yard every morning on the same lamppost. I wonder what it has already managed to figure out about me. Many people have noticed, if you have ever offended a crow, it remembered you and will remind you of it at every meeting with screams, dive bombing, and sometimes a precise hit from above. But the reverse is also true. If you regularly feed crows in one place, they remember you and start waiting for you. Some even start bringing gifts. Zoologist John Marslaff from the University of Washington described how his daughter regularly fed crows, and over time, the birds began to leave objects right by her food plate: a button, a piece of glass, a bent paperclip. This is documented behavior. Crows can show something akin to gratitude. If you want to make friends with a crow, feed it regularly, in one place, at the same time. Do not make sudden movements. Gradually, it will start coming closer. Then take food from your hands. It takes time, but it works. People keep crows as pets and describe them as exceptionally smart, affectionate, and sometimes jealous creatures. A crow in captivity can learn several dozen words. It uses them in context. It doesn't just reproduce the sound. It says hello when someone enters and goodbye when they leave. This is not training. This is understanding. A topic that scientists study cautiously because it easily slides into anthropomorphism. But the data is there, and it is interesting. Researchers from the University of California, Davis, observed the behavior of American crows near dead birds. They wanted to test the funeral hypothesis. Was this really a ritual or just a reaction to an unusual object? It turned out that crows sit near the body of a dead bird, scream, then fall silent, then fly away. And after that, they avoid the place where the body lay for several days. This is not just curiosity. It is avoiding a dangerous place, learning by observing another's death. But there is a catch. Near a dead crow, they screamed much longer and louder than near a dead bird of another species. This means they distinguish their own from others, and the death of one of their own causes a stronger reaction. To call this grief is to project human emotions onto a bird. But to call this just a reflex is to ignore the data. The truth is likely somewhere in between. Crows live a long time. They know their peers for years. They form stable social connections. When someone from this network disappears, something happens. How exactly this is experienced from the inside, we do not know. But something definitely happens. The mirror self-recognition test is one of the standard tools of cognitive science. The concept is simple. A mark is placed on an animal that it cannot see without a mirror, and researchers watch to see if it tries to remove the mark while looking at its reflection. If it does, it means it understands that it sees itself in the mirror. This test has been passed by chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, dolphins, elephants, killer whales, and corvids. Magpies became the first birds to pass the self-recognition test in 2008. Since then, similar results have been obtained with crows. What does this mean? It means that the bird has an image of itself. The concept of I is not an abstraction. It is a concrete neural construct that allows it to distinguish itself from its environment. The list of creatures possessing this: humans, great apes, dolphins, elephants, killer whales, and corvids. That is all. The next time you look at a crow near a trash can, remember, this creature knows that it exists. Every morning you go outside and almost certainly see a crow. Sitting on a lamppost, walking along the sidewalk, digging in a trash bag. An ordinary gray bird. But in reality, it is a creature that recognizes your face, remembers it for years, evaluates you as a threat or a potential ally, passes this information to its chicks, plans actions several steps ahead, knows how to deceive, make tools, and negotiate. It observes you and is perhaps drawing conclusions about you. Third question. Has your attitude toward the crow changed after this video, or is it still just a noisy bird in the yard? Write in the comments. It is always interesting to read. Subscribe to the Veldra channel. Like this video if it was useful to you. See you in the next episode.